Hey guys, my name is Jonathon Henderson with Pressure Washing Marketing Pros. In today's video, I want to go ahead and show you how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer in the exterior cleaning industry. Whether you're currently using somebody right now or you're thinking about using somebody in that sense or an agency, I'm going to go ahead and equip you with the knowledge, with the 10 things I'm going to share so that going forward, you can either go ahead and assess your current Google Ads marketer or the company that you're going to go ahead and use. And the reason why I have so much knowledge about this topic is because we do over 50 to 75 exterior cleaning Google Ads campaigns, throughout the year. And so when I'm usually auditing accounts for new clients that come our way, there are major red flag and issues that I've seen, and I wanted to go ahead and condense it into this video so that you guys have that knowledge and so that you guys can spot a bad marketer from a good marketer in that sense. And so without further ado, let's get right into the video, because the first thing is going to be a lack of transparency in budget management. And so the biggest one that I see when it comes to lack of transparency and how the budget's going to be managed for the Google Ads campaign is that a lot of guys will give an agency their actual management fee and the ad budget all at once, right? And so what that means is that, let's say that the agency or the person that you're running Google Ads with says, you know what, you need about $1,500 in ad budget, and then my fee in order to go ahead and run this for you is going to be $500, which in total that would be $2,000 in that sense, right, guys? What some guys will do on a monthly basis is they'll give all of that $2,000 over to the marketer, and then the marketer will go ahead and use that ad budget and the management fee however they see fit. But the thing that's bad about that, guys, is you don't know how much of that $2,000 that agency is really going to go ahead and use, and do they have the best interest at heart for you and your business. And so an example, a real life example that I've seen is that there was a company that came to us, right? And I asked them, I said, how much are you spending on Google Ads? And they said $1,500. And the company that they were using was actually charging them $800 to manage the actual Google Ads account as well. So the total cost of, for them on a monthly basis was going to be $2,300 in that sense. And so what ended up happening is they were giving this company $2,300 at the beginning of every month to manage. And then guess what, guys? When I did an audit on their account, only $400 was being spent in their entire Google Ads account. And, the biggest thing that I saw there was that they were only spending like $20 a day, $30 a day. And so if only $400 is being used and you're paying this agency every single month at the beginning of the month, $2,300, that's $1,900 that the agency may be taking for themselves. And so the proper way to do this, guys, is that you need to have your agency or the person that you're working with put your card on file for the Google Ads budget, and then you pay separately for the management fee, right? And so what that does is it provides transparency so that both parties, know what's going on, and so that you know what's going on and you know how much you're being charged, and you know that your budget can fluctuate. So for example, would that same company still have that same budget, right, in January when it's super slow for $2,300, right? So sometimes, guys, a good Google Ads good Google Ads marketer is going to fluctuate their budget. Some months you're going to spend more, some months you're going to, spend less. But if they, tell you to give you their ad budget all up front, and that's how they roll and that's how they do things, run away, guys. That's one of the biggest red flags. One of the first things I wanted to go ahead and talk about was a lack of transparency in budget management. Make sure, guys, that when you're running your Google Ads, that ad budget is getting charged, that you're paying that on your own, right? That you're paying that on your own and you're not giving it to the agency to pay it, because you don't know how much of that budget or how much of that money that they're going to actually use for your ads and how much they're going to use for their management fee in that sense. And so you want to have that transparency. So the perfect scenario for that is just like how we do things. I might tell a client, hey client, you need to spend $1,500 on your Google Ads budget. We'll either set up their Google Ads account and attach their card and attach all of that, under their name, under their jurisdiction. And I'm like, hey, you're going to get charged by Google independently, right? But Also, we have our $600 a month Google Ads charge that we're going to charge you as well, but you're going to be in control of the ad budget, and that ad budget is going to be under your card in that sense. And so now the client, they're responsible for their payments that they have, because it, not only does it protect the client because they're making their own payments, they don't have to, say, hey, how, where's my money going? And it also protects the agency or the person who's doing the Google Ads marketing, because guess what? At that point, if that person were to run and you're an agency and you're like, man, I got to foot the bill myself. So make sure, guys, that's the number one thing, is lack of transparency and budget management. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is going to be incorrect budget strategies. And if you guys are on this channel, you've probably heard me say plenty of times that you need to spend at least a minimum of $1,000 a month if you're an exterior cleaning business running Google Ads, right? And so what I usually see is that businesses are spending too much or businesses are spending too little for the, Google Ads campaigns that I have audited in the past, right? And so what do I mean by spend too little? And I'm going to go behind the scenes in a minute to show you guys exactly what I mean, to break these numbers down in that sense so that it's easy for you guys to go ahead and recognize, right? But the incorrect budget strategy in that sense is going to end up being that some guys work with agencies where they tell them, man, you only need, or they'll even take a guy on that only has $400 to spend in Google Ads, or even let's just make it a round number like 500, right? Like $500 to spend in Google Ads. Well, that's too little. You know what I mean? That's way too little of a budget. And I'm going to show you guys in a minute why that's too little. Then on the other hand, and I was actually just talking to a new client of ours yesterday about this in this sense, but we saved this client. This client was spending $5,000. It was a paver sealing business, right? Paver sealing business in Florida. And they were spending $5,000 a month on Google Ads. And I said, dude, you don't need to be spending that much. Honestly, guys, right now, you know how much we spend a month? Typically between $1,000 and $1,500. So we saved that client $3,500 to $4,000 in getting the same amount of leads at half the cost, right? Or more than half the cost in that sense. And so they were spending way too much money. So let's go behind the scenes and let me show you, right, when it comes to that budget strategy, how to break it down by the numbers. So, right, guys, we're behind the scenes right now where we're looking at this. And so the first thing, let's just go ahead and say spending too little, right? Because that's usually what I see is guys spend too little. So let's say a guy has $500. Now, I have this CSV file, guys, in that sense, that breaks down all of the numbers just on average in the United States, you know what I mean, when it comes to the average cost per click, right? Because you bid. And so, if you have a $500 budget, right here it's saying that the top of page, or like how much the click is going to cost in the high range, is on average going to be around $16 a click. And then on the low range, about, $3.50 a click. But honestly, typically what I see is between $8 to $10. So I'm going to use $10, $10 a click as a benchmark right now in that sense, right? So let's go back. So let's say that you're a business, you're a Google, you're a pressure washing business, and you're spending, you have $500 right here, guys, right? $500, and each click is about $10. So I'll divide that by 10 right here, because each click, so you have $500 in budget, and then you divide that by 10, because what I'm equating right now, guys, is going to be how many clicks you can get. So you can get about 50 clicks. You know what I mean? So if you're only spending $500 and each click is about $10, you're only allowing yourself 50 clicks a month in that sense, right? And so if you look at the average conversion rate, which you might ask, what is a conversion rate, Jonathan? Well, the conversion rate is going to be, how many clicks do you get? How many clicks does it take in order to get a lead or a call in that sense? So for example, if I were to go ahead and get 100 clicks on something, you know what I mean? And I only got 10 leads. Guess what? 10 out of 100 is going to be what, guys? 10%. So that'd be a 10% conversion rate. And so if you look at it right here with 50 clicks in that sense, right here, the average conversion rate in the home service industry, is usually it says it's going to be around 10%. Now for our clients, we're usually anywhere between 15 to 40% in that sense, right? But let's just go ahead and just use the industry average, which is going to be about 10% in the home service industry, right? So if I were to go ahead and convert 10% of users, you know what I mean, with 50 clicks, guess what, guys? That's only 5 leads in that sense. Literally. That's only 5 leads in that sense. And so would you want to go ahead and like I said, guys, this is by the numbers. So if 500 and I divide that, right? And I divide that by 10, because if we look at it, that's 10. So guess what? If each click is costing me $10 and I have $500, guys, right? And then at that point, let's just say I'm converting at 10%. You know what I mean? So I do this times 0.1 in that sense. Guess what, guys? That's only 5 leads in that sense. And so if you were to tell guys like, hey, man, I can go ahead and get you 5 leads for $500. That's why a lot of guys, when they run Google Ads, they say, man, dude, like I spent $500, dude, and I got like 4 or 5 leads, man. I wasted my money. And I say, because you were spending too little in that sense, right? Now, of course, conversion rates, guys. Let's just say that, let's just raise it instead of 10%. Let's just say 15%, like our lowest conversion rate right now. Let's even do that. So if you have $500, and then, like I said, once again, you divide that by 10 for how many clicks you could get. So you get 50 clicks each month. And let's just say instead of 10%, you convert 15% of people. That's 7.5 leads. So even for me, when I'm talking to guys, I'm like, dude, if you just spend $500 with us, and I said, you're going to get 7.5 leads for $500 and our management fee on top of that. Most guys would be like, Jonathan, to hell with you, man. Like, I'm not going to spend, with our management fee of $600 a month at this time. And you know what I mean? Spending that $500, that's $1,100 for 7.5 leads. You're just not going to do that, guys, right? You're just not going to do that. And so, let's say that you had a healthy budget and you were spending $2,000. You know what I mean? And let's still say that each click was $10. So at that point, if each click is $10 and you have a $2,000 ad budget, that's $200 right here, guys, that you're or 200 clicks that you could get. Now, if you convert it back at 10%, like how we did earlier, that's 20 leads. So $2,000 for 20 leads, that's not the best. You know what I mean? That's because that's still $100 a lead. But at the end of the day, I think if I told guys 2 scenarios, I said, here's one scenario where you pay $2,000 for 20 leads, and here's another scenario where you pay $500 for 7 leads in that sense. There's going to be a lot of guys that will be like, you know what? I'll spend $2,000 for those 20 leads, because I know if I close at least 4 of those jobs in that sense, 4 or 5 of those jobs, at that point, I know I'll make my money back. But if you only have 7 chances at bat, yeah, you only have to close 1 or 2. But guess what, guys? You have more potential to make your money back when you actually spend $2,000 and getting 20 leads than you do if you spend $500 getting 7 leads at that point. And then let's go back and do the math. If you have $2,000, right, guys? You have $2,000 right here. And then at that point, let's just go ahead and I divide this $2,000 once again by 10, because each click is $10 in that sense. So that's 200. And let's say I convert it at 15%. So, 15% of these clicks are going to turn into leads or people, right? Then that's going to be 30 leads 30 leads that I could potentially get. So that's 2,000, you know what I mean, with 30 leads in that sense, right? And when we did the math with 15%, right, with 50 clicks, you know what I mean? Which was a $500 in that sense, right? That was 7.5 leads. So would you rather spend $2,000, right, guys, with a 15% conversion rate and get 30 leads? Or would you rather spend $500, get a 15% conversion rate, and get 7.5? So that's why, guys, it's very important to break this down by the numbers in that sense. You want to break this down by the numbers when it comes to this. And so that is what I'm looking at in terms of, behind the scenes, and what we're looking at, guys, in terms of how to spot a bad or good Google Ads marketer in that sense. So now that I've showed you guys the exact thing of, how to break down your budget strategy in that sense, my next point, guys, is going to go ahead and be no or improper conversion tracking, because I know we just talked about the incorrect budget strategy, or, how most bad Google Ads marketers have an incorrect, budget strategy in that sense. And I know we talked about conversions and how I said conversions are basically going to go ahead and be what? Leads, which are going to be either phone calls, form submissions, whatever it may be, right? So one big thing that I do see as well on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer is that they have no conversion tracking, or they have improper conversion tracking. And so also, guys, I'm going to go behind the scenes and also show you guys when it comes to, conversion tracking, what that stuff should at least somewhat look like. And it's not too complicated, guys, in that sense. It's really not too complicated. And the biggest thing of why this is so important is because one of the clients that we just recently got about a month ago, and they're a big player in the game, right? We looked at their Google Ads account, and the company that they were using were, assigning the wrong conversions, right? And so instead of saying like calls and contact forms, fill outs were actually conversions, they were actually choosing like clicks as the conversion action in that sense, which essentially means, guys, is that they were counting the clicks in the Google Ads account as conversions and not actual phone calls and form submissions as conversion actions. And so what ended up happening is Google was getting fed the wrong data, number one, and number two, they had the wrong tracking. And so that's a consequence of having no or improper conversion tracking. The consequence to that, guys, is going to end up being is that number one, you're feeding Google bad data, so your ads will never be optimized. And this client that had the bad conversion tracking, when we went ahead and aligned up like their phone calls that they got from Google Ads to the actual spend that they had, these guys were actually spending, guys, $794 a lead in their account, guys. $794 a lead, right? And so if you're feeding Google the wrong data, then at that point, guess what's going to end up happening, guys? Your campaign's never going to be optimized. Now, the second thing too why improper conversion tracking is because you won't have the proper reporting. So like that client that we had that was spending $794 in that sense, a lead, guess what? They didn't know because they had improper conversion tracking in that sense. And so you want to make sure that your Google Ads marketer has the proper, conversion tracking and conversion tracking measures. Because also, guys, that same pay-per-selling client that I was talking about previously, when it came to the budget strategy where they're spending $5,000 a month, guess what, guys? They had also improper conversion tracking where their agency that they were using were counting leads as double. So whenever they got a lead, it counted 2 times in that sense, right? And so it bloated up the numbers. You know what I mean? And so they were still feeding Google the wrong data, and they were still spending too much in that sense, right? And so let's go behind the scenes, guys, and I'm going to show you conversion tracking right now. So as you guys see right now, I'm on the back end right now, right? When it comes to the Google Ads account. So I'm using a dummy account right now, guys, that we have. And what I'm looking at right here is going to be the conversion actions. And so this is where what you guys don't necessarily need to be pros or experts at this. I'm just showing you so that you have at least some base level of knowledge about this. And so when I look at, conversion actions, when you go here inside a Google Ads account, you can create conversion actions. And in these conversion actions, you can track things like select the kind of conversions you want to track. And so for our clients, we usually track 2 things, the website stuff and the phone calls. You know what I mean? And the phone calls, yes, you want to. So calls from ads, calls to a number on your website, clicks on numbers on mobile sites. And so these are things that we want to go ahead and track, of course, because we want to track the phone calls our clients get. Also, you can track website actions as well, like online sales, link clicks, page views, and signups. And so on this website, we actually create a custom conversion tag within this website one, right, guys? And that's how we're able to go ahead and track the forms. But as you guys can see right here, when I hover over this, right, it says online sales, link clicks, page views, and signups. So what a lot of agencies will end up doing, guys, is they're actually going to count link clicks, and I've even seen it as bad as page views as conversions in that sense, right? And so when you're getting the reporting and you're looking at your stuff on the back end, guys, you're like, oh my gosh, you don't know what's being tracked, and you don't know how many times I hear guys say like, hey man, I don't know how many leads I'm getting. I don't know what's being tracked right now. But guess what, guys? It's right in front of you. It's right in front of you right here in that sense. And so you want to make sure that the agency that you're working with has proper conversion tracking in that sense so that they're attributing and they're actually going ahead and properly, assigning like leads in that sense, right? Whether it's a phone call, a form submission, those are the things that you want to go ahead and track in your Google Ads campaign. You don't want to go ahead and track things that don't matter. You know what I mean? Like page views. And a lot of companies will do this so that they can mask or hide the actual performance or the results of the actual campaign, or simply they don't know what they're doing in that sense, guys. And so this is conversion tracking 101 in that sense. And so just to give you guys an example, right, of what this actually looks like in that sense of what conversions and how all of this actually starts to make sense. So I'm going to make sense of it right now, guys, by going to one of my first Google Ads accounts that we ever ran in the exterior cleaning industry back in May of 2019. So I'm showing this because this, is just very old and, there's no ramifications for me showing this. And so, for example, guys, if I look right here, it shows the cost, which this company spent basically $30 in that sense throughout the month of May 2019. So they got 295 clicks, and then the conversions, guys, as we just talked about, conversions are going to be like phone calls, or it's going to be form submissions in that sense. So phone calls or form submissions. And so as you can see right here, they got 65 conversions in that sense out of what? 295 clicks. Now, if I were to do 295 divided by 65, that's how you get this 22.73% conversion rate, like we talked about earlier, guys, in that sense. And so whenever, you want to find out the cost per lead, you would go ahead and you do $65 divided by $2,000, and that's how you get this cost per conversion, or what I like to call cost per lead. And so that's $29.61. And so what ends up happening is guys don't know what they're looking at, and they're like, Jonathan, I was getting a $4 cost per conversion. And then I look on the back end and I'm like, yeah, but they're tracking page views or they're tracking clicks, which clicks don't necessarily equal somebody calling you or filling out a form submission in that sense. And so that's why it is very important, guys, in that, to go ahead and look at this, to be able to make all sense of this and that. So even like I said, guys, all the stuff that I'm saying right now, 295, if you divide that by 65, let's just do that right now. And that's how you get to 22.37. So 295 divided by 65 in that sense, which I don't know what that is, tires, but let me just go ahead and just do divided by 65. So there we go. So, let me do 65 divided by 295 in that sense, right, guys? So that's how you get to 22% basically. You know what I mean? That's how we basically got to 22% in that sense, right? So 65 divided by 295 in that sense. And so that's how we got to this number, right? And then like I said, however much you spend, which is 2,030 divided by 60. So 2,030 divided by 60, 65 leads in that sense. So 65 leads. That is $31.23 a lead, which, obviously was a little bit more, guys, in that sense. But still, it says the cost per conversion was going to end up being $29.61. So, man, I don't know, Google's platforms, messing up right there. But nonetheless, guys, that's how you're going to get the cost per lead in that sense as well, right? So that is something that you guys would want to go ahead and do, is you want to look at that back end of that. You want to go ahead and understand somewhat of these numbers so that you can go ahead and keep your Google Ads marketer honest and make sure that they're tracking the right items and the right things, because a lot of companies don't end up doing that in that sense. Right, guys? So that's the full scope on conversion tracking in that sense. So now that we just covered conversion tracking, guys, the next thing that I want to go ahead and point out on how you can spot a bad Google Ads marketer is going to be them not using a dedicated landing page for your Google Ads campaign. Now, you might ask, what is a landing page, right? So a landing page is like a one-page website in that sense. So it's like a one-page website, and it has clear call to actions, it's fast loading, and it has few distractions in that sense. And so you can't click on different pages. It's literally a one-page website that's going to display all of your information in that sense. And it's what we use for our client campaigns. And the reason why we do that is because they actually, convert at a higher rate than what I see a lot of other companies do, which is run the ads to an actual website in that sense. And so one big thing, guys, that I see as a red flag when is not using dedicated landing pages, because when you drive traffic to a website, it does two things. Number one, it doesn't convert as well because people have multiple options. People can click on your blog, they can click on your service pages, they can click on like frequently asked questions, they can click on all these informational things. And while that is good when it comes to trying to convert organic traffic, it doesn't work well with paid traffic, because people that are, that are coming through, looking for your service on the paid traffic side of things, they want that information clear cut, and they want to be able to easily contact you. And so people have different kind of behavior when they come organically through SEO and when they come through paid traffic. And so that's why it's important to use dedicated landing pages, because number one, it converts at a higher rate because you have all that information that person who's coming, looking for your services in that sense, clear call to actions, fast loading times, few distractions. And I'm going to show you guys an example of just kind of the template that we use for our landing pages as well. And so the second thing on why you want to use dedicated landing pages is because it makes conversion and tracking so much easier. And so just like the last point that I talked about, where people don't have any conversion tracking or the improper conversion tracking, that company that I mentioned that was spending like $700+ for a lead in their Google Ads campaign, guess what? They're running it to their website, and the conversion tracking, like I said, was messed up in that sense. And just like the pay per selling business that I was talking about as well, they were running traffic to the website. And so whenever you're tracking these actions in that, and they get all cluttered and in the mix. But when you have dedicated landing pages, guys, guess what? It's easy to set up that conversion tracking, because that landing page is going to be separate from the website. And so that's why we do that for all of our client campaigns. And another point on why I say that you want to have dedicated landing pages as well is because if you're running, let's say that you're trying to target pressure washing, gutter cleaning, and window cleaning, right? What I see is that guys will run this all to the same page or a page on their website. But imagine if you're running all three of those kind of campaigns, like pressure washing, gutter cleaning, and window cleaning, and you had a page dedicated for just window cleaning. A landing page dedicated to just window cleaning services, a landing page dedicated to just gutter cleaning services, and a landing page that was dedicated to just pressure washing. What that's going to end up doing, guys, is that it's going to make it easier for you to convert those users, because the ultimate thing on why you want to use landing pages, because they have a higher, and you can even look this up on the internet, guys, they have a higher conversion rate. They convert a lot more than running it to a website in that sense. And so that's why you want to have dedicated landing pages, and then take it a step further. And when you have a campaign, you're targeting multiple services, have dedicated landing page for each service that you provide. So pressure washing, have dedicated landing page for pressure washing, have a dedicated landing page for window cleaning, have a dedicated landing page for roof cleaning in that sense, house washing. And that's what we do for our client campaigns, and why we're able to get such high conversion rates. And as we talked about, earlier in that sense, guys, the higher conversion rates that you get, the lower cost per lead you ultimately pay, and so that's why it's so critical to make sure that you have high conversion rates in that sense. And landing pages help when it comes to having high conversion rates. And so I'm going to go ahead and go behind the scenes and show you guys our actual landing pages. So if you guys look right now, you'll be able to see that this is just an example of one of the kind of landing pages that we use, and I put my branding on it. But as you can see, we usually use a tracking code. It has the phone number immediately, has a contact form immediately. We usually put a photo. It clearly states what we do right here. It has the services off, all of that stuff. We show some, before and afters, the why choose us kind of stuff, the benefits, the cities that they may work in, the reviews, all of that information, right? So that's the information that you guys want to go ahead and display. And you want to make sure that, as you can see, nobody can click on anything else. They can't click on anything else. They can't go anywhere else. If you hit this call now button, it calls the business. If you request an estimate, it goes straight up to the contact form where you fill out that information, right? You're not hitting different things on a website or doing anything like that. And so that's why it's so important and critical to have dedicated landing pages, so that you convert at a much higher rate in that sense. And so this is just an example that I want to go behind the scenes and show you guys real quick. So now that we talked about dedicated landing pages, guys, the next point that I want to make on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer in the exterior cleaning industry is going to be if they have a lack of call tracking or a lead tracking system, right? And so what does that mean? You want to have your Google Ads marketer be able to track all of the calls, to be able to track all the form submissions, and have an overall lead tracking system for what they're doing for you. Because if they don't have that, if they're not even at the very least recording the calls, then you need to run, because they have no way of improving that campaign, and you don't have a way of truly knowing if you're making an ROI or not in your actual campaign in that sense. And so for us, we actually go ahead and use what converts, but there's other kind of things as well out there, other platforms and software like CallRail and different platforms like that will actually go ahead and record calls, record form submissions. Because if you're not tracking, what doesn't get tracked doesn't get measured, and what doesn't get measured doesn't get approved upon in that sense. And so that's why you want to make sure that your hard-earned dollars and your hard-earned money is being put in the right place, because you're left in the dark if you don't have call tracking or a lead tracking system. And so any Google Ads marketer that does not have call tracking or a lead tracking system in that sense to be able to make sure that you are actually closing these leads, or that if you're actually getting phone calls and it's recorded and you can actually hear, right, then you need to go ahead and run for the hills. You don't need to work with that person or that agency if they don't even have call tracking or a lead tracking system. And so I'm going to take you guys behind the scenes just to show you what that can look like and what it looks like for our clients. If you guys look right here, you'll be able to see that we track all of the calls and even sometimes the revenue, right? Which this client, this total quote value over the last 30 days. So I'm just looking at the last 30 days for this client for the Google Ads results that they were able to get, right? And this is a software that we use called What Converts. And What Converts allows us to go ahead and kind of see how many calls a client has gotten, the transcript, all of that other kind of stuff, in terms of, not only does it hold the client accountable, but it holds us accountable to make sure that we're driving leads for the clients, and to also make sure that they're answering the phone and doing what they need to do as well. And so we can track, everything. And so in our system, we even have it if it was quotable or not. And I know you guys see no, that doesn't mean that it wasn't a credible lead. That might just mean that they weren't able to quote that person. And why answering the phone is so important. Look, they didn't answer the phone on this one right here, right? So guess what? It wasn't quotable because they probably tried to call the person back and that person didn't answer. And so, one big thing on that is that you want to be able to have and be able to track these leads in that sense. And so we track all of this stuff for our clients to make sure that they're getting the most bang for their buck. And so we also hold them accountable, like, hey man, you weren't answering the phone. Also, it allows us to see the services and the questions and the different things that these clients are looking for, because it helps us adjust our strategy in that sense. So if we start seeing that we start getting more phone calls for gutter cleaning or window cleaning, whatever it may be, we can take a look at all the calls and say, hey, this stuff might be ramping up in that sense, right? And so at that point, since we actually have the physical data of, the phone calls and all of that, at that point, we're able to go ahead and use that data to enhance the Google Ads campaign. And so that's why at the basic level, guys, you want to be able to track the phone calls, form submissions, so that you can, know that your money's working for you and not against you. And then at other levels, guys, more advanced levels, if you guys are even watching this and you're at an advanced level in that sense, you might use call tracking so that you can go ahead and see and verify if your office manager is answering the phone. To go ahead and give feedback to your sales guys if they answer the phone and they're trying to close deals. And so that's why it's vitally important to have a lead tracking or call tracking system in place, so that, guess what? You can, like I said, spend your money as efficiently as possible. So now that we talked about call tracking, guys, and the lack of call tracking and why you need to go ahead and make sure that your Google Ads marketer has some form of call tracking or lead tracking system in place, the next point that I want to make on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer for the exterior cleaning industry is going to be if they have no prior results or experience in the exterior cleaning industry, guys, right? So if they haven't worked with businesses like yours, then guess what? They're probably not going to be good at managing your Google Ads campaign. And so that's why it's very important that they have at least, because what I've heard clients say is that, hey man, this guy that I used, he did really good for this one guy that's a pressure washing business, and so I used him as well. And I say, guys, it takes more than just one case study or one testimonial in that sense. Does this person have multiple testimonials, right? Do they have multiple client testimonials in that sense? On our YouTube channel, you guys can clearly see that we have multiple client testimonials that we have throughout our YouTube channel, throughout our website. If you go visit it, we have that verifiable proof so that you guys can ensure and trust that we know what we're doing. And so make sure that you're doing that as well when you're looking for a Google Ads marketer for your exterior cleaning business. Is you want to make sure, in my opinion, that they have at least like 5 verifiable like client testimonials in that sense, at the very least, that they actually have at least 5 people that have done their research and and have verifiable results in that sense, that okay, this guy was able to grow my business. And so the reason why I say like one isn't enough, because it could be a person's friend. You never know that kind of relationship that that person has behind the scenes. But if it's 5 or more, then you can probably say, okay, this guy isn't manufacturing this. There's a lower likelihood that the guy's manufacturing, or that person's manufacturing, false results. And so make sure that they have that prior experience in the exterior cleaning industry. And it doesn't matter, like, if the guy's really good at Google Ads, but he does it for plumbers, it doesn't matter. It's just like for you guys in that sense. If it's a landscape, like, you guys would probably say, if you're an exterior cleaning business, that you're probably better than a landscaper that does exterior cleaning, right? There's going to be a big difference between a landscaper that does exterior cleaning and an exterior cleaning company that only does exterior cleaning in that sense. And so they're going to have different processes, probably better equipment, all of that, right? And so use that same knowledge when you're assessing who you're going to utilize for your Google Ads campaigns, right? So make sure they have prior exterior cleaning industry results, so that you're getting the most bang for your buck, and that you have somebody that knows what they're doing. Because the next point I want to go ahead and make on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer is going to be poor communication and lack of proactivity. And so this is going to be, if you're currently working with somebody right now, if they have poor communication, so that means that they have infrequent communication with you, they're not responding to seasonal changes or anything like that, guys. Get out of the, if your Google Ads marketer is not responsive and it's taking them 4 to 5 days to get back to you, then guess what, guys? That is money lost. Let me give you an example of this. We had a client that actually switched to us at the beginning of the Christmas light season. And why is that? Well, sometimes, look, clients do things last minute. And so this client wanted to offer Christmas light installation services, right? They wanted to go ahead and offer Christmas light installation services, and it was like the last week of October. And they had gone to a training earlier, in the last month in September, and they just decided that, hey, we want to pull the trigger and get a couple of jobs in right now in October. But guess what? That agency didn't respond to them for a week that they had been working with already. And I think maybe because they didn't have the professional knowledge, or they didn't have the experience to go ahead and run Christmas light installation, campaigns for Google Ads. So therefore they stalled in that sense of wanting to run it, which they didn't get back to the client. And that equals money, because guess what? It took us about 3 to 5 business days to get that client's Google ads up and running for Christmas. It actually took us 3 days to get it done. I actually specifically remember this. It took us 3 days to get it done. But as you guys may or may not know, if you run Christmas lights during November, that's the biggest and highest demand month for Christmas light installation in that sense, right? And so they lost out already on like a week's worth of basically leads, because guess what? Their agency had poor communication. And so make sure that if you have a current Google Ads marketer, if they have poor communication, if it's taking them 4 to 5 days to get back with you, that's a major red flag, and that's probably somebody that you don't want to work with, or a company you don't want to work with in the long term. And so the next point that I want to go ahead and make when it comes to how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer in the exterior cleaning industry is going to be failure to optimize and manage the campaign regularly. So you guys don't know how many clients, clients' accounts that I've audited, or, I should say that they became our client, but you don't know how many Google Ads accounts I've audited. And I see that the agency or the person running that Google Ads account has not touched it in like 6-7 months. And they just basically set it and forget it in that sense, right? And a lot of business owners don't know that there's a handy dandy setting in the Google Ads account where you can see the change history, so that you can go ahead and look to see if that person has that change history in that sense, right? If that person's been, optimizing and doing different things in that account. Because guess what? One thing, going back to that client that we had, or the client that we have right now, who's working with another agency that was spending $700 plus a lead. Another thing that we found out is that when I went and audited their account and looked at the change history of that account, guess what, guys? I saw that they did not. So right now, guys, it's March 2025, but they did not go ahead, and we closed this client in like end of February. From September to February, nothing had been done in the Google Ads account. Nothing. And we found that in the change history. And I'm going to show you guys where that change history ad is right now, because if you go ahead and you look at the change history and there's no activity, right? Then that's a red flag to mean that they're probably just forgetting about your Google Ads campaign and not optimizing it as regularly as they need to. So let's go ahead and take a look at it right now, guys, of the change history. So guys, as you can see, I'm back in the dummy account right now. But what you want to go ahead and do is when you log into a Google Ads account, guys, whether you want to, you can look right here on the left side and the change history is going to be readily available, or you can click right here at the very top and just put change history right here, and you can find that right there, right? And so, of course, guys, there's no change history. Like, we did do change history stuff for this client, because you guys might be like, hey, Jonathan, how come right here it says that you guys didn't change anything in May? Well, Google only stores this change history information for up to 2 years, and this was back in 2019, so they're not going to keep that data. You know what I mean? But you can go in here and you'll be able to see like any and all changes that they made, or if they made changes to the bids, the audience, the location, the budget. You'll be able to go ahead and see this information immediately and see if they have been changing things, the date and the time. And so that holds them accountable. So you can look at this change history and be like, hey, man, you haven't touched my account in X amount of days in that sense. And so that's something that you guys want to go ahead and look at and ensuring and making sure that you guys are capitalizing on when it comes to looking and assessing your Google Ads marketer in that sense. Right, guys? And so that's something that you want to be on the lookout for, is the change history, so that you guys can verify if they're actually optimizing your campaign on a consistent basis. And so now that we discussed the change history, guys, the next thing I want to talk about on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer in the exterior cleaning industry is going to be lack of clear and transparent reporting. And so what do I mean by that, guys? Some businesses either have, or some guys that run Google Ads either have oversimplified reporting, or just super complex reporting. And what I mean by oversimplified, well, I'll show you guys an example of a new client that we actually got this month and the old reports that they actually got. Because the main thing, guys, if I were to just break this down as simple as possible, the main thing that you want to be able to look at whenever you're breaking down a Google Ads reporting for someone, or you're looking for Google Ads reporting in that sense, you want to go ahead and basically report on these three things and make sure that that agency is reporting on these three factors, which honestly, this is just the clear-cut bare minimum that they should be, measuring. It's going to be how much you spent, right? So how much you spent, what was the so how much you spent, right? And how many leads you got. That's really what I said three, but those are really the two things, right? If you spent $2,000, how many leads did you get? So the total cost, the total leads, and the cost per lead. So I should say those three things. The total cost, right? The total cost, how many leads you got, and then the cost per lead. Those are the three things that you guys want to look at. And I'll say it one more time for you so that you guys can understand what you want to be looking for. Is the total cost of that the total cost, whether it's a period of 1 month. So for our clients, we report on the entire month, right? Because it makes it easier to go ahead and digest and comprehend. But you want to make sure that you look at the total cost for whatever time period that you want to see, the total leads that were generated during that certain time period as well, and the cost per lead also. You want to be able to look at those numbers so that you know if you're effectively spending your money right. And so a lot of companies will have just lack of reporting, or it's not clear in that sense. And so you want to make sure that there's certain benchmarks, certain KPIs that both you and the agency or the person are communicating, so that you guys are both on that same page. It's something that we do for our clients as well, to make sure that we report to them every single month for their Google Ads campaign, to make sure that we are aligned. And if we're not aligned, what do we need to go ahead and do to fix that and mitigate that issue in that sense? Because we're not perfect either here at Pressure Washing Marketing Pros. And so what we do is we make sure that we communicate with the client, right? To say, okay, we're right here. This is probably what we need to advertise, and we make suggestions off of that. And so you want to have clear, transparent reporting. So I'm going to show you guys an example of bad reporting in that sense. And like I said, it's from somebody that we had just recently started, or will recently start running Google Ads for the next week. But when we saw the report that they were getting, they couldn't even answer any of these basic questions that I was asking, like what's your cost per lead? What was your cost during this time period, right? How many leads did you get during this time period? They had absolutely no idea. And so make sure that, guys, once again, I'll go over those 3 factors, that you look at the total cost, the total leads, and the cost per lead. That is what you guys want to look at. So let me show you guys an example of bad reporting. So guys, right here is just an example of bad reporting in that sense, right? Why is this bad reporting? Well, number one, guys, they have the total cost that this business spent. But other than that, though, you don't get to see how many leads. So like, how many leads were generated in this campaign? We don't know, right? It's just a thing that shows them. It's just oversimplified, and it's not really showing the metrics because we don't know how well this converted in that sense, right? Because it's like the average cost per click. Most clients and most people, like you guys for exterior cleaning industry, you guys don't care. Like, you do care how much you're paying per click, but the biggest metrics are like those 3 things that I mentioned: your total cost, how many leads are generated, and what's your cost per lead. That's probably generally what you care about in that sense. And so right here, guys, we don't have the leads that were generated, and we don't have the cost per lead. So how can I make informed decisions on if I need to continue spending my money on this if I can't even see the amount of leads that I'm getting in that? And so there's a lot of reporting that I see that's just like this, where it just has, oh, it's showing me my click-through rate. It's showing me my clicks. It's showing me how many impressions I got. That does not equal money, guys, right? That doesn't equate to money. That doesn't equate to the biggest factors that it comes to why you're using a Google Ads marketer. It's because you want to be able to get leads, right, at an efficient and at an efficient rate as low as possible. And so something like this doesn't tell me anything, right? This is just a bad example of reporting in that sense, right? Where it's just clicks, impressions, click-through rate, average cost per click, and then just the cost. You know, the total cost they got right. So you want to be able to know how much you spent in total for that, right? But also at the same time, I'm looking at the total amount of clicks or the total amount of impressions. Guess what? Like that, and that does not necessarily matter, because how does that tell me how well our Google Ads are performing if I don't know how many leads, if I don't know what the cost per lead is? For all I know, you know, we don't know how many leads were generated. For all we know, guys, out of 522 clicks, they could have only generated like 15 leads, right? And so usually what ends up happening is that when agencies hide this information, they hide that information because what? Because they probably have bad cost per leads, and they're like, we don't want to show the client this information, so therefore we'll just report some numbers on them and get them a little bit confused, whether it's too complex of information or too vague of information like you're seeing right now. Because then what ends up happening is they just say, hey, you know what, like this is the report that we got. I don't really know how to interpret this, Jonathan, or analyze this. And so this is what you don't want to do. You don't want to have oversimplification of an actual report. You want to make sure that they're giving you transparent and clear guidelines of what they're reporting in that sense, and that you have those main 3, guys: the total cost, the total leads, and the cost per lead are actually on your report. If those aren't on your report, that's a big red flag, guys, and that might say that they're trying to hide something that and that needs to be uncovered in that sense. So yeah, guys, this is an example of a bad report, you know, that was sent to a new client that we just ended up getting in that sense. And that's why they're a new client right now, because they didn't know what was happening in their agency. So yes, guys, that's something that you want to go ahead and be able to look at. So lastly, guys, what I want to go ahead and talk about, you know, point number 10, right, on how to spot a Google Ads marketer, because we just talked about the lack of reporting and the lack of showing those important metrics in that sense, is honestly, guys, quite frankly, it's going to just be over promising and unrealistic expectations, right? So like, if they just come out the gate saying, I'll be able to get you 50 leads in 1 week, you go ahead and run, guys. False promises where they talk about instant results, or the biggest one, guys, if they guaranteed lead numbers, run away. If they guaranteed lead numbers like, hey, you'll get 50 guaranteed leads, that's a big red flag, guys. That's a big red flag, because even, let's just say that they do guarantee 50 leads. You don't know across what time frame that they're going to guarantee those 50 leads in that point. I see it all the time, guys, on Facebook, you know, with Facebook ads of other marketers, where they say like, you know, get 50 pressure washing leads guaranteed this month, right? Or guaranteed. And they don't even specify a date range. If I told you that I could get you 50 guaranteed leads, but it's over the course of a year, you might be like, John, I don't know if I want to do that, right? That's basically only 4 leads a month. But hey, I guaranteed you 50 leads. I didn't tell you when I would go ahead and do it. So that's why, guys, don't fall for that like over promising and unrealistic expectation ploy, right? Just don't fall for it in that sense, guys. Make sure that you are doing your due diligence when it comes to that, and that you're researching, and that you're looking around. If it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And a bonus point that I want to make right now too, guys, is also going to end up being, if you don't end up being able to own the account or being able to have access to that account, that's a big red flag in that sense. If you're not able to access that account, or you're not able to go ahead and at least be able to see read only or be able to look at the data that is in that Google Ads account, that's a big red flag, guys. And why is that? Because if you were to leave that agency or leave that company, you probably don't own that Google Ads account. So you got to start all over again. You don't know how many times with clients to where I've seen it to where they don't own their Google Ads account. They don't own anything that's theirs, right? And so when they leave the agency, they're like, I don't know where that Google Ads account is. They just ran it for me. And it's like, dude, because, whenever you don't know this information or whenever you don't own your account, you're at risk to get your account suspended. Why can it get suspended? Well, if there's two Google Ads accounts with the same card number, guess what, guys? Google will go ahead and suspend it immediately. How do I know? Because we have firsthand experience with that, guys. Another thing too is that it's easier to go ahead and get better results with an account that is seasoned than it is an account that's brand new. And so if you're working with a brand new account because your other agency, got salty and they didn't want to go ahead and give you access to that, run away, guys. So one question that you should also ask a Google Ads marketer as well is, do I own, if I leave you, can I own this account, right? Or do you have, can I have access to at least see? I'm of the belief, I don't give our clients, if we create an account for them, I give them access to look at the account and read it, but I don't give them access to do anything editing wise. Now if they leave, we give them full access back to their account, guys. You know what I mean? You have full access back to your account to do whatever you may please with it. But if there's agencies that are out there that are not doing that for you in that sense, then guys, run for the hills in that sense, because guess what? If it doesn't work out, you got to start from ground zero again. You have none of that data at that point, and it can be very hard to get that data back up and running again. And the access issues and all of that, it just creates too many problems at that point. So make sure, guys, like I said, a bonus tip, which could be point number 11 in that sense, but it's a bonus tip. Make sure that you have access to that actual Google Ads account. Now, what I want to talk about, guys, is I want to talk about some questions that I commonly get when it comes to, Google Ads and how to choose a marketing company in that sense. So a question that I always get is what red flag should I look for when reviewing proposals, right? So if as I talked about earlier in the video, if they require the entire budget up front to mean your ad budget and your management fee, run away, guys. Also, another thing too that I would say as well, if you're looking at a proposal, if the more that you spend, the more that you have to go ahead and pay them, look into that a little bit more deeply in that sense, right? If you spend more, because what a lot of agencies or a lot of people will do is that if you spend more, they're going to charge you more, a percentage of that ad spend. When honestly, guys, that can be unethical in certain cases. In other cases, it can be ethical. So let me go ahead and make, and let me go ahead and distinguish both of them, right? So on one hand, guys, how it can be ethical. It can be ethical if you're spending more, but you require more specific campaigns, more locations that you're targeting, more landing pages and more services, all of that, guys, then yes, that increase that you're spending in that sense because they're trying to accommodate a new area or a new location for you, all right, then they need to go ahead and up that ad budget. But if you're just simply just wanting to spend more, let's say that you spend $1,500, but you're like, man, I want to spend $3,000, and there's an agency where it's like, hey, I'm spending $1,500, but there's no new campaigns or anything like that. It's kind of a red flag, guys, in that sense, because you're not managing more. All you're doing is managing the same campaign, and it's just more spend that's behind it. But you're not doing anything different. That agency isn't doing anything different if you spend more and you have the same exact campaigns. So it's like, hey, I'm going to spend $3,000. Because now how can you trust that agency? If that agency were to say, hey, man, you need to spend more. You don't know if they're telling you to spend more because they want to charge you more or if it's because it will actually be in your best interest. So those are things that you have to go ahead and look at in that sense, right? And so if they're just charging you more just because of how much you're spending, but it's like you're running the same campaigns, doing the same thing, then guess what, guys? That's a red flag. But if they're charging you more because it's like you have more campaigns, you're targeting a different area that they have to now account for in that sense, which means they have to make new landing pages, new ad groups, all of those different things, then yes, I could see why they would raise the price. But if they're running the same exact thing, but you just want to, invest more money into it, but they're just like, they're going to charge you more, that's a red flag, guys. So yeah. Another question that I get, guys, too, a lot, moving on with that, another question that I get too is how soon should I see results and what's a reasonable cost per lead? And so those are great questions that I've gotten in the past. And so how soon should you see results, guys, with the Google Ads marketer in that sense? You should see it within the first week. If you got 0 leads within the first week, guys, and I should say it depends on the season, right, guys? So of course, if it's like December, January, and even February, guys, like it's going to be harder because, unless you're in Florida, it's going to be harder to go ahead and get leads during that time period because it's winter months. A lot of places are shut down. People aren't really looking for it during that time period. But guys, typically in the peak season between like mid-March to October, right, guys, if you're running ads during that time frame, you should at least see at least one lead within the first week, right? If you've gone an entire week without a lead, guys, that is a red flag, and that is something that you should be looking at in that sense, right? Because it's all about speed to lead in that sense. When at least what I've noticed when it comes to our clients is like the faster we get them to lead, the more that they trust us in that sense. And so, yeah, speed to lead. But for Google Ads results for our campaigns that we have personally for our clients, we usually see leads within the first day sometimes. You know what I mean? But usually, typically 1 to 3 days in that sense. But yeah, that's you should at least see leads within that first week if you're running ads between mid-March to October in that sense, right, guys? And then what's a reasonable cost per lead? Honestly, guys, a reasonable cost per lead is going to be anywhere between like $30 to like $75 in that range. And the reason why I have that range is because there's going to be other factors like, what's the competition like? How much are these guys bidding? What's the budget? And so typically if you're in that range between $30 to $75, that's good. But like an excellent cost per lead is anything under $50. Anything under $50, guys, is an excellent cost per lead. But what's acceptable and manageable, guys, would be $30 to $75 a lead. If you're paying $100 plus for a lead, that's not acceptable, guys. Like $100 plus for leads, it may not be acceptable unless, guys, it depends on the time of the year. So if it's in December, January, February, and even the first half of March, a lot of the time, you may see those leads like raise up to that price. We don't see that very often at all for any of our clients. Like I don't know the last time our clients were paying like over $100 per lead in that sense during mid-March to October. I don't think we've had that in a while, guys. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, in that sense, you want to make sure that it's in that range between $30 to $75 in that sense when it comes to how much a reasonable cost per lead would be with Google Ads in the exterior cleaning industry. So that's that, and that's a question. And then another question I always get is, how can I verify if they're actively optimizing my campaigns? As I talked about earlier, guys, the change history will allow you to see that information so that you can go ahead and see if they're optimizing your campaigns fully, guys. And so, yeah, guys, when it comes to this video on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer, just to summarize this video is point 1 is just lack of transparency in the budget management. So never give people your upfront ad budget and the management fee. That's the biggest takeaway from that. Incorrect budget strategy, make sure that they're telling you to spend, or they're telling you at least a reasonable spend amount. And so typically for me, the budget range for exterior cleaning businesses are anywhere between $1,000 to $5,000. You shouldn't spend any less than $1,000, and you shouldn't be spending any more than $5,000 as an exterior cleaning business, guys. That's just a rule of mind. Point number 3, we talked about no or improper conversion tracking. Ask them how they're tracking conversions in that sense. That's as simple as that, guys. To recap that, make sure that they use, so point number 4, make sure that they're using dedicated landing pages as well, right? Point number 5, make sure that they have a call tracking or a lead tracking system in that sense. Also, Point number 6, make sure that they have prior results or experience in the exterior cleaning industry and at least 5 testimonials or 5 people that have said that they've done really good, or 5 accounts that they can show you that they've done really good work for. Because anybody can get lucky once, but can you get lucky multiple times in that sense? Because that's not luck anymore. That's consistency, and that's, showing expertise in that sense. Point number 7, lack of communication. Make sure that they are proactive and they have that they're communicating with you. Another thing is going to be failure to optimize a campaign regularly. Make sure that you're checking that change history, or ask them, like, what's the change history on that? If you don't have access to it, make sure you're asking them that. Like, when's the last time you optimized it? Can I see the change history? Right, guys? The lack of clear and transparent reporting in that sense. So, make sure that they're sending you those 3 things that I talked about, guys, when they're reporting to you, which is going to be the total cost, how many leads you got, and the cost per lead. And then, point number 10, guys, is going to be over-promising and unrealistic expectations. Watch out for guys that guarantee how many leads you're going to get, right? Watch out for those guarantees, guys, in that sense. And then the bonus one I gave you guys was make sure that you can have access and ownership of that account, either immediately or if you were to depart with that person or agency that you'd be working with, guys. And so if you follow this, you'll be able to go ahead and spot out a bad Google Ads marketer. But if you need help with this, guys, if you want to know, if you want to go ahead and make sure that you have a reputable company that's running Google Ads for your exterior cleaning business, and that you are equipped with the most information as possible, and that you have somebody that has over several results like how we do, guys, which we're running, at the very least over 50 exterior cleaning campaigns here in March right now, guys, right? And we have experience running hundreds of campaigns for Google Ads for exterior cleaning businesses. And so if you want a professional, guys, you want somebody that wants to look at your Google Ads and you need help with Google Ads management, make sure that you click the link in the description, guys, to get a free strategy session for us, and let's see if we would be a good fit to work with each other. But thank you guys so much for watching the video on how to spot a bad Google Ads marketer. I hope your guys' marketing journey goes well and that you guys are able to go ahead and crush it. I'll see you guys in the next video.